Well, thank you for staying out tonight and listening to some tax and asset protection, all we're going to be doing tonight. And we're going to make it a bit fun, a bit alive and a little bit sexy. So really, who's heard me speak at the 4-day events and wherever else? I'm glad you have, Sarah. Just a few people? Okay. Tonight I'm going to be speaking, although there'll be some rehash, I'm actually going to be speaking a little bit more in depth because obviously at the Business Academy, there's some specialist things you can do in business which you can't do if you can't do in a normal situation. Who here is in business to give me some idea right now? Okay, good, quite a few. Who wants to be in business? Okay, so there's a few who want to be. Okay, good. Who here would be, their business would say be a small business, like say less than $500,000 turnover? Put your hand up. Anyone here who's like more than $1 million turnover business? Okay, so really it's all small business. Okay. So that gives me a pretty good idea. Okay, so look, this information, this is just a disclaimer. Accountants and lawyers, we have to sort of put these legalese, mumbo-jumbos up there. Not acting on any information presented. And look, that is important, by the way. I mean, it's great to sit here and hear me speak, but really I'm teaching some principles. Your situation is going to have specific factors that are going to apply to your situation and not be relevant to everything we're saying here. Okay. A little bit about who am I. Background. Experience as a lawyer, accountant, financial planner, all rolled into one. So got a few degrees, not quite as many as Todd Hutchinson, who I think he's got about 16 qualifications. Is that right, Todd? I think he must have lived in university, mustn't he? Todd's actually my business partner, by the way. So 10 years experience at the ATO and 10 years in private practice. So I've worked in law firms, accounting firms, have my own businesses, all that for a while. So I've been everywhere. I've worked, JOB, I've been a contractor, and also I've got my own business now, small, medium-sized enterprise. So pretty much can touch on all of that. And experience in the wealth creation industry, quantum physics. Okay. Lawyer, accountant, financial planner. Of course, as a lawyer, it means you can totally trust me. Okay, tonight we're going to be speaking on a few things. So, who am I, why I'm here? Protecting your business assets. So, I've talked about asset protection before, but I'm going to go a little bit more depth into some of the things which I normally touch on. So, just in terms of how specifically with business where you can go. About tax minimisation. Only paying a taxman what you legally have to. Who right now thinks you pay far too much tax? Quite a few? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go through a few things tonight, as well as a little bit about what's actually happening in our tax office in Australia and things like that right now. And business strategy. I'm going to touch a little bit on business strategy and having a plan and all that in business. One of the things we do as accountants believe very strongly is how you plan is everything in business. One thing, Todd, who enjoyed Todd's presentation, by the way? It's good, isn't it? Yeah, Todd is exceptional at business strategy. And one of the things that, even in my own practice, since I've been working with Todd, we've gone to a whole new level in the importance of business strategy. And I'm far more passionate about that and the importance of planning yourself. It's very interesting, you know, because a number of years ago, Harvard University, they actually did some research and they looked at a group of students who had all started together and mapped their progress over about 25 years. It was a research project. They found that 5% of the students outperformed in financial worth and in all the rest of the Harvard graduates combined. What was the one thing they did differently? Anyone guess? They planned. They found that the 5% all had very good goals, clear plans, a clear strategy to achieve them, and they followed it through. The rest of the students were a little bit more like, let's just go from there. Okay, problem. Too much tax, as we know, in Australia. We all would agree with that. I'll show you very shortly exactly how much tax we do actually pay. The other problem, the fear of losing our assets. Now, I talk about asset protection a lot like car insurance and things like that. Who's got car insurance here? Most? Who hasn't? No one. So has everyone got car insurance? You don't have a car? Okay. Is there anyone who's got a car and doesn't have car insurance? No. So, okay, why have you got car insurance? Anyone? In case someone crashes into you, and what will happen if that happens?
Have some sort of coverage.
Yeah, peace of mind, right? Absolutely. So you're getting it for peace of mind. Now, who thinks, though, isn't that a negative mindset? Really, you've been getting car insurance, you're sort of putting it out there, aren't you? But we have car insurance because we all know that we've got contingency planning, haven't we? I mean, who here wants to smash their car? Who here right now, if you had no car insurance, smashed your car, wrote it off, would have a bit of a financial pickle? Put your hand up. A few of you? No one? But who would basically not want to be caught out in having to buy a car which you couldn't afford? Yeah? I mean, my car, for example, itself, I mean, I've got quite a good one. And of course, like many cars through the business, for tax purposes, I finance the vehicle. Now imagine if my car's financed and I crashed the car and write off, got no insurance. What's the finance company going to say? Are they going to let me off the debt? Yes. That would be very, very nice if they did. But no, they don't. So there's a lot of reasons why we insure. It's to protect ourselves against contingencies. So it's a relevant fear. And the reason why most of us don't protect our assets is one simple reason. Anyone guess? We don't believe it can happen to us. Right? I'll show you some stats that show that is absolutely not the case. In business, the moment you go into business, and many of you are, you immediately are at risk of being sued. Not just that, I'm going to show you a few facts about what happens if you do get sued or if your business gets into trouble. And statistics show that 80% of small business, which all of you in the room who are in business are in, will fail in the first 5 years. Will not work out. So, and there's a lot of things that if you're not structured properly will cause you catastrophic consequences which you could have avoided if you've been structured properly. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail tonight than I've done in previous presentations. So, fail solution. Blindly trusting your accountant to fix the problem. Now the reason we're all here is because we want to be educated about business. We're not just blindly trusting some business advisor, correct? Same deal here. We're here to educate you tonight and make sure that you absolutely understand what you're doing in accounting and tax, and whoever you work with knows what you're doing, and you'll know what they're doing in your affairs. Okay, the successful solution. So what doesn't work is what I call blind trust in an accountant. Anyone here ever blind trusted a financial planner and lost money? Anyone? Anyone ever blind trusted somebody and had some financial loss of some kind? Yeah? Anyone ever gone into business with somebody in blind trust and been caught out? Anyone? Yeah. We all have, haven't we? What avoids blind trust is knowledge and understanding and what you're getting into. So, the biggest way you can become successful in terms of your tax minimisation strategy is, sure, engage advisors, but you've got to have knowledge and understanding of what you're doing. One of the things I'm quite big about, for example, is health. I don't rely on doctors for my health. I mean, I'm aware there's doctors, naturopaths, and I do use them, but as much as possible, I'm getting educated, and even now I'm going through a further overhaul of my education about health and actually understanding about looking after myself and avoiding problems rather than actually having them happen to me. So if I don't blindly trust doctors, I don't blindly trust medical professionals. I use them, obviously, from time to time, but I'm educated in my health. Likewise, tonight we want to be educated in tax and understand what the laws are, how we're structuring. For example, when you're setting up a business, you need to have awareness about structuring yourself properly. How many people, when you started your business, your accountant said, oh, don't worry about setting up a company or trust or anything, just make some money first? Anyone had them say that? Yep. Common thing. I mean, that's just crazy. And when you see why, you'll see why it's absolutely crazy. The worst thing you can do is do a business and not have a structure because of the potential consequences if things go wrong. And the problem is we often assume it won't go wrong. But anyone here ever had a car crash? Put your hand up. Keep your hand up if you expected and were waiting for the car crash to happen. No one? Okay. Calamity happens when you least expect it. One day you can wake up and just like that, you go to your doctor for a routine checkup and discover you've got cancer. Anyone ever expect that? You go for a routine checkup, you discover you've got a brain tumour. It happened to a friend of mine not long ago. He had health insurance, fortunately, but he discovered it. Complete shock. So calamity and disaster will always happen to us when we least expect it, as a rule. So very similarly, Who thinks here, but if you were going to get sued or your business was going to go broke, but you would know it was coming in advance? Put your hand up. You wouldn't, would you? So it's about making sure you're absolutely ready for it and understanding right now that everyone in this room who's in business right now, who's not structured properly and not set up properly, you're literally one day away from being wiped out. And I'm not saying that, it's not exaggeration, that's a fact. You can go home, you can find someone suing you, you can get a notice from the government. Happened to one friend of mine, got a notice from the government completely out of the blue, telling him that basically certain things he's doing in his business he had to stop. Bang, just like that, his business was virtually all but wiped out. Another one of my friends, an internet marketer, made an absolute fortune on emailing all across the world. Guy in Perth, government basically decided one day he was spamming and went after him. Got fined absolute millions of dollars for it. I had another one of my clients who actually rang me in a frantic. He runs his whole business through an email database list. He got shut. One day they went on to send out an email to their database, and the email wouldn't send. They couldn't work out why. They thought it was a simple problem. Still wouldn't send. Finally, the IT guy told them the problem is over there. Actually, something's not wrong with the network. And by the time they checked, they'd been shut down because 3 people had complained to SpamCop online that they were actually spamming them. And his whole business got shut down just like that. Took him weeks to get it back up again. His whole business. So, you're starting to get a bit of a picture about the importance of setting yourself up and structuring, anyone? And making sure you're planning for your contingencies and getting everything done correctly. Okay, so applying what you've learned and dealing with the advisors that millionaires use. In other words, deal with advisors. We've dealt with clients from in all different walks. I've personally dealt with clients ranging from who've got absolutely no money whatsoever, to clients who've had millions of dollars, to clients who've earned income of $14 million a year. Recently dealing with a farming client who's got something exceptionally like $70, $80 million of farming assets alone. Structuring. So really the principles in many ways are similar, but is unique stuff depending on where you're at. Okay, what you want is to keep your wealth and only pay the OT what you absolutely have to. Okay? I actually don't have a problem with paying tax, but I only believe in paying the OTO what you absolutely have to. Having a strategy and plan. What you don't want to be is just following the norm. Ultimately, it's about liberating from the system. Those of you who know me, who's actually heard me talk about my speeding fines and my parking fines at the 4-day event? Anyone? Yeah. I've got this little bit of a, bee in my bonnet at times about authorities and about systems and all that kind of stuff. Who here's got a little bit of a hate being told what to do, anyone? Who here loves being told what to do? No one. Todd does. I do in business. We all, most at some level, hate being told what to do. Who gets really frustrated and completely peed off with the amount of government regulation? Anyone? Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? The amount of government regulations. I was just having a discussion today. We had an interesting discussion with Sarah about parking fines, and it was quite funny about the fact that the 2-hour parking zones and all this kind of stuff, and how the system works, and this, and explaining how one of the things I discovered from one of my colleagues, how a lot of the laws that we see in the over-regulation is actually not technically legal, a lot of it, but what they've worked out is that people will just go along with it. And the classic example is the tolerance limits and speeding. Now, I've actually stopped getting speeding fines at one stage for a long time because I worked the system out. And then what happened was I just got 3 in about 2 months. And I was like, what's going on here? Now, of course, I'm getting out of them. I'm using some techniques which I've used to get out of them. But one of the things they worked out is this. The reason that tolerance limits were very high before, like around the 15k mark generally, is because cops know full well that if you challenge a speeding ticket in court, many times, but if it's not a high rating, they'll win because radars are notoriously flawed in their readings. There's numerous evidence to show that many speed cameras and radars are actually something like, I've been as far out as one of the most famous instances where it was actually raining and the radar clocked a car at 138 k's and the car actually proved he's going 60 k's. It was 78 k's out. There's numerous evidence to show that many radar readings are actually wrong because wind affects the radar, it's a whole lot of facts. So when people go to court, they generally win. But the cops worked out how many people actually go to court. Very few go to court over a fine. Why didn't you go to court? Too much hassle. See, once upon a time in the law, the courts were very simple. In fact, the way law worked in the Middle Ages originally was you'd go to the king, you'd plead, if you felt an injustice, you'd plead to the king. And then the king introduced courts, which are people that actually hear cases and plead. And it was very simple. It was actually quite straightforward. You just walk into the court, you'd be waiting your turn and you'd plead your case. Now you go through this long, expensive process, you pay huge amounts of money, you get 6 months, 3 months or whatever in the system. But once upon a time, justice was a lot simpler, but they know that people do that. People just simply go along with the norm and just pay it. So, and I found out usually if I contest a fine, and I never go to court. I've actually never, ever had to go to court to contest a speeding fine yet. Because I've just worked out with the system many times, they know these things. So understand you've got this system and it's learning to play within the game. And I'm one big believer in you don't do anything to break the law, that's silly. But at the same time, understanding that there are certain ways that you can play it. And it's very important to understand that with tax and everything else. And ultimately, it's about, my personal passion and higher purpose is very much about liberation from the system. That's something from when I was very young. When I was 19 and I was asked, what do you want to do with your life, by a friend of mine. And I just said, the first thing that came out of my heart was get people out of paying tax and free from a lot of this basically system nonsense that goes on. And 5 years ago, in fact, before I was speaking a lot on accounting and structures, I used to do non-profit law reform seminars. And I used to go around speaking a lot just about stuff that was going on in our system and how to address it. Because the fact is right now in Australia, we've got a highly regulated system, and although there's some benefit in it, there's no doubt about it, it restricts a lot of our creativity, and it actually causes people to have this attitude, but we don't want to be told what to do. Because who here, if taxes were fair and reasonable, and you knew that it was a fair amount, who here really would actually have no objection to paying tax whatsoever? Yeah. Let's say that tax today was 10% of a flat rate of 10%, where 10% you knew was taken, it went to community services to help people less fortunate than you and help run governments that you knew were reasonably efficient, there wasn't wastage, salaries are fair. Who wouldn't even hesitate to pay 10% of your wealth towards doing that in the country? Correct. But there was a professor over in the US who actually did some research, and he discovered that it actually costs the government more money and made less revenue by the current tax system than if they just did a flat rate of tax around 10%. Because what they found was if people have an incentive to avoid tax based about how they see it. Like I can tell you now, if tax was fair in Australia, I wouldn't be up here speaking to you much about tax because no one would bother coming. But when taxes become ridiculous, people will then start trying to find ways around it. And people will start paying huge amounts of money. So for example, let's say you've got a $40 million tax bill. Would you be willing to pay $2 million to get out of it? You would, wouldn't you? Wouldn't even hesitate. And if you really were really angry about it, do you think you might even do something a little bit borderline to get out of it? Some of us would. We could say no, we wouldn't, but look at a lot of the people who've been prosecuted with Operation Wickenby. Many people who would have been told, just go set up an offshore structure, divert all your income over through the Bahamas, through the Cayman Islands, pay whatever else, and get out of it. And a lot of people would do that. So the fact is we're living in a system right now that's actually inefficient and actually costing money to the country and costing us having an efficient government. Now, why do I go into this kind of stuff? Because it's really important to have a mindset and understanding. One is my higher purpose. It's what I'm really, when I do this, it's not just about teaching you that. It's actually understanding that what it's about. And one of the reasons I know with my tax, my own personal tax, and where I've got benefits and I've managed to get savings, it's actually because in my mindset and in my heart, I actually don't have a problem with paying tax. I have a huge problem with paying taxes that I see are excessive and oppressive, but actually don't even work for the country anyway, which they don't. Because the costs that actually happen just way outweigh it. And why don't they change it? Because what would happen if taxes were fair? Well, bankers would be out of jobs, accountants, lawyers. How sad, isn't it? Who here would weep for the accountants and lawyers? Todd, put your hand up right now. Alfred the Great, a famous English king in the 8th century, said about ignorance, how knowledge liberates its power. The saddest thing about any man is to be ignorant. The most exciting thing is knowledge and knowing. For a bit of fun, out of Todd's visual audio kinesthetic, what do you all reckon I am? Using Todd's principles. What's my voice? What do you reckon, Todd? Yep. What was the other ones you said? Breathing? Yeah, I generally breathe more from here and sometimes from here. So not from up here. And dress, I definitely like what's comfortable. So what does that tell you? I probably am more. Yeah, I'm probably more towards that. Anyway, what relevance had the presentation? Nothing! But for goodness sake, it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night and you're here speaking to a tax speaker. Gosh, you guys are nuts, completely off your head. Anyway. Goodness me. I mean, we should do a song and dance for a party or have a wine, I think, just about. What do you reckon? Anyone want to go get some wine and we'll... You shall know the truth, from the truth shall set you free. Scripture verse. Truth does, it sets you free. Okay, protecting your assets, and I'm very grateful that Lou Hardy is not here tonight. You know why? Because Lou Hardy always takes off the word T off the assets. No, she's actually broken into my slide presentation a few times on the laptop before we get up and gets rid of the T on assets. Bit rude anyway. Okay, case studies. Look, there's a lot of situations of asset protection where it's safe people that, well, they saved their assets, using that word. But actually my friend who was shut down in his business for internet email spamming and prosecuted by the government, he got fined $5 million. $4 million through his company, $1 million personally. However, how much of that fine do you have to pay? $4 million was erased and wiped out. And $1 million was, he was still fighting the government for ages, but because of the way he structured himself, they weren't able to get through to his assets. Everything was set up through trusts, through companies, through everything else. So if he was fined $5 million. The government immediately virtually had to concede $4 million because he had a shell company and shut the company down. If he had not been protected properly, he would have been done, completely done. There's a very famous internet marketer, for example, Frank Kern. Anyone heard of Frank Kern? Frank Kern, yeah. Frank Kern lost everything. I mean, he's quite funny. The government actually bankrupted him completely. They went after him, shut down his business, and he had all his assets in his personal name, hadn't bought it, and had to start again. He was so mad at the government, he actually called something like, I actually set up a company called excuse it being, some very rude, obscene name basically about the government, which I'll leave it at that. It's quite funny, I'm sure you know what I mean, don't you, if you know Frank Kern? Yeah. Oh, it's Penn S Enterprises or something like that. And then Penn S IRS or something. It's some really name like that. So yep, okay. So that's one case study. I personally had a client actually come and see me about 6 years ago, and this was quite tragic. He was a financial advisor, really decent bloke. He and his wife had worked like 30 odd years to build up a $3 million net worth, worked extremely hard. And this is what happened, and this is actually, and for people who think you can never get sued, and even if you are, you've got insurance, this is probably the most classic situation where that is a huge fallacy. He was set up reasonably okay, but he'd made a few major omissions in his asset protection. He had a lot of assets in his own name. One of his businesses wasn't properly structured, things like that. He recommended buy the book generally, but what happened was he discovered an offshore investment that was actually returning about 30% per annum consistently, very good investment. So he started putting a lot of his clients into that, off the record, just saying, look, this is my financial plan, but this investment here is making good returns. A whole lot of them did. For 11 years, they all made really good returns. One day, the whole investment fund shut down, and everyone lost their money. He was so... The problem that had actually happened for him by doing that was a lot of his clients were really angry about it, and they were talking about suing him and taking a class action against him because he recommended an offshore investment that they thought was dodgy. There was one other problem. The PI, the way financial planning works is you can only recommend investments that are on the approved investment list. And if you don't, the PI insurer will not cover you. So he came to see me in a complete state because he realised if he got sued, he had no insurance cover. They weren't going to cover him. Insurers had told him that. We pretty much worked out, but his whole net worth, or most of it, was at risk suddenly. Now, the worst situation was you could see the stress on his wife. She was extremely strung out about the whole thing and was completely beside herself because she'd particularly sacrificed to work hard and build all that kind of stuff. So, if he'd been structured properly, he would have been okay. So, I've seen clients who've come in who've been beautifully structured. I've seen clients who haven't been. Even in one business venture I was involved in the past, the thing that saved me was I was perfectly structured. This venture, things didn't work out for me. And because of the way I was structured, I was able to shut down the business quite smoothly, do it all properly, and had no personal impact on me really of any major significance because I'd done that. So being protected can save you a lot, and I'm going to show you a bit more. I'm going to walk through that, but just a few case studies. This is how the lawsuit process works, just so you know. If you're in business, the lawyers will search the asset registers to see if it's worth suing you. So you'll walk along to a law firm or anywhere else, say, look, I want to sue this particular guy. Like, say Brent over there. I mean, Brent's a sort of ugly guy that people would want to sue. So someone goes up and says, look, I want to basically sue Brent. So we go through it, and the first thing we have a look at, does Brent have any assets? And if Brent has actually gone ahead, which he's actually come and seen me and he's beautifully structured, they'll think, darn it, this bloke's got nothing. Then they'll check Brent's wife, Ola, fantastic lady, finds out that she owns a family home, for example, and nothing else. I'm not actually saying what is the case, but this is just an example. But they find that there's lots of companies and trusts set up, but also happen to know assets, which also Brent and his wife Ola happen to have some level of involvement in. Straight away, the moment that happens, the lawyers know hard work. And I had a client come and see me about 6 years ago who wanted to sue someone. And they said what had happened was they'd been ripped off $200,000 in a $2 million investment scam, where a whole lot of people had been caught out by some guy claiming he could produce magical returns from the Bahama Islands, took the money and basically disappeared, but still kept living in Queensland and nothing happened. That was actually quite a remarkable situation to show you how the law works in Australia. And what I try to explain to people who get strung out about, being chased after by the government. Firstly, it took 5 years to get ASIC to take any action about him. Because ASIC's attitude was, oh, well, it's all offshore, it's got nothing to do with us. It took them 5 years to actually convince ASIC to move, number one. Number two, when she came to me to sue him, I said, well, all his assets are owned. He doesn't own anything. He owned absolutely nothing. It was all owned, we found out, through an offshore trust over in what's the name of the place, Noumea. So running through Noumea and then running through Anguilla or someone like that. So that was basically the end result. So I said, no point. I said, if you want to sue him, have you got $150,000 to put in trust account now? She said, no, I've just been ripped off $200,000. I said, don't even bother. Not particularly great, not particularly fair, but that is how the system works. And if you're in business, it's understanding there's a lot of hurdles and smoke screens to go through. So asset protection is ultimately about creating hedges or smoke screens. One thing I will always say to people up front, if people say, you can guarantee me I'll never be sued and lose my assets. I said, well, one, I can't guarantee you'll never be sued, but I can't even guarantee you won't lose your assets. Laws change. There are ways sometimes to get through structures, but it's darn hard. It's a bit like your computer. Anyone here has got firewalls on your computer? Anyone here got antivirus protection? Yep. Anyone here not got antivirus on your computer? A few? Yeah. That means that if a virus gets through your firewall, your computer's basically done. But if you've got antivirus and you've got firewall, is your computer pretty safe? Yes, it's not 100% safe. I know hackers, incredibly good hackers, who've managed to find ways through them. But it's very, very hard. And it's the same with asset protection and setting up your companies. So 4 good reasons to protect your assets. Lawsuits. You'll be sued on average 3 times in your lifetime. New South Wales, Victoria, by the way, is pretty much up there too. Insurance. This is the other reason, is that it doesn't cover you. I've already gone through and told you how. There's a lot of reasons why insurance won't necessarily cover you. There can be that. I've seen anyone here, and I keep it very simple. When people say I'm insured, I just ask one question, and ask all of you this now. Put your hand up if you've read your car insurance policy, you completely understand it. Put your hand up. Okay, put your hand up if you've read your whole house and contents policy and you know what you're covered for completely. Okay. Have I just proven my point? Yeah. So you're at the mercy of the insurance company, correct? Okay. So can you say to me with conviction that if you've got insurance, you're going to be fine? Can you? No, you can't. You're basically trusting in a hope. You're not trusting in truth. Governments want your money. Don't steal, the government hates competition. There's a very, very interesting book. It's by a guy called Bastiat. Just Google it. It's called The Law. And it's actually just an exposition explaining about law and legal rights and what law is really meant to be. And it's absolutely brilliant. And I honestly recommend that it's something that everyone should read. If you're really passionate about truth and that, it's brilliant. Because he puts things in such perspective, it changes your whole understanding about law and what law's about. For example, Bastiat says many of us are hung up with obeying the law. He said many are hung up about obeying the law. And he says, and law is to be honoured. But he said, but what really is law? For example, here's a great example. Let's just say that a law was passed tomorrow saying that Australian families are only allowed to have a maximum of 2 children. Any more than that would have to be aborted automatically. Who would just comply and go along with that law? No one. What if the law is now saying that you'll do that though, and you'll be killed or you'll be tortured, and you knew you'd be tortured if you got caught out? Who would probably obey the law? Let's be honest. I think a lot of us probably would. But is that law? Is it? Who thinks that's not that it's law, but who actually thinks that's law that should be obeyed? No, we don't, do we? So, and then you just go down in measures about law, about what really is law. So, for example, we have no problem with saying paying taxes lawful. And the concept of taxes is actually healthy and good in a society. But let's say the government takes 98% of your income in taxes and leaves you 2%. Is that actually taxation or is it stealing? What do you think? You're starting to think stealing. Is everyone start to agree it's pretty close? Let's say that you knew that they took that. For example, in the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago, the tax collectors were actually on licence. So this is what would happen. You'd be on licence as a tax collector. You would pay money to the government, and the government would give you the right to go and collect taxes on behalf of the tax office. And any money you collected over and above the taxes, you could keep for yourself. So what do you think the tax collectors would do to people? They'd bully them into paying more money. Again, is that taxes or is that stealing or extortion? Yeah. This is what I want you to do, start thinking about this. So let's go back a bit. Who thinks 80% taxes is stealing or getting pretty close? 70%. 60%. Do you get the drift? Would it shock you to know that 69% of your money goes in taxes? On average? So really, most of us know. Why do you think Australians are so big about getting out of tax? Because deep down we know we're being absolutely fleeced. Correct? We're being absolutely fleeced, and we know it in our guts and deep down in our hearts. Why do I fight against parking fines and speeding fines? To be completely honest, I don't actually have an issue with certain things. Number one, I don't have an issue with road safety. Who would agree? Who likes the idea of, who here's got children? Put your hands up. Who here likes the idea of people driving safety around a school? Of course we do. Isn't that a good rule? And who likes the idea of having some kind of limitation with parking, at least anyway, so to some degree that the right people using it say who own the space? Who would agree? Yeah, there can be some legitimacy to this all. But when it starts to become where deep down we know that we're being fleeced, and we know that it's got nothing to do, and the government gets up and says to us, oh, this is all about road safety, when everyone knows full well that's not the truth. When we start to resist it and we start to fight it. Agree? When we know this. So if we know that road safety is the truth of the matter, but let's just say, and I said this, I had a long argument. I remember having someone once saying to me, you know, you just got a bad attitude with fines. It's because you probably speed. If you actually just started driving properly, this was a friend of mine a couple of years ago, we had a long argument about it. And she was saying to me, you should just obey the law and everything else and go into that kind of stuff. And I just said to her again, I said, you look me straight in the eye of conviction and tell me it's got nothing to do with, you know, there's actually road safety why they fine so much and not revenue raising. Oh no, it's a good penalty. I said, okay, let's say that they passed the law tomorrow saying that you got more demerit points, but they slashed the fines down. So everyone just paid $20 fine, but they actually lost more demerit points. Now, isn't that more about road safety now? So the fact that they keep increasing fines is showing you what? Yeah, but giving a different story when it's really about raising money. And I said to someone, taxes are getting increased alarmingly all the time, we just don't know it. Things like changing the tolerance on speed cameras, that immediately brings more revenue in. Not increasing brackets of inflation on tax, but they increase the tax rates. And it's why one of the reasons I say with tax and asset protection, we absolutely want to be educated. Who's starting to get this? Anyone? Did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Is there anyone that audits the tax office as to where the money actually goes?
It's a very good question. Not really. There's supposed to be. I've heard various rumours, done my own research. There's a lot of evidence that shows that most of the money actually goes to the Federal Reserve Bank in paying national debt. And that's because who here has heard Jamie teach about fractional reserve banking, how credit's just created out of nothing? Yeah, so money's just created completely from nothing. So it doesn't exist, it just gets created. And that creates interest. And I actually had a friend explain fractional reserve banking, and this is actually very relevant to tax. It's actually really important to understand this. But the way he gave the example was quite brilliant at a seminar, the best I've ever seen it. He said, imagine there's all of us in this room here right now, okay? Imagine we are the community, we're it, you know, we've got our own community. Imagine I'm not in the community at the moment. So all you guys are happily functioning. Let's just say that all of you, let's just say, for example, have got 100, we'll make some kind of money. I don't know. Look, I'm going to be an egotist, you know, we'll call it Wazza dollars, okay? Because so let's just say that everyone in the room's got 100 Wazza dollars, okay? And that's the economy and the currency of this country that we have here. Now, what happens is that Wazza, me, turns up, that's what I'm nicknamed by a lot of my mates, turns up, and I think, I've got a really good idea how to increase my welfare without doing any work. So this is what I do. I come to you and said, hey, I've got a great idea for you. So I said to Brent, hey, Brent, I said, I've got the most brilliant idea for you. And Brent goes, what? I said, why don't you give me a mortgage over your house, and I will basically lend you another 100 Wazza dollars for you to go and do investment. Brent goes, what a great idea. But I don't actually, all I do is make up Wazza dollars and give them to him. Okay, now how much work have I actually done to do that? None, okay? But what's just happened straight away to the economy? Anyone see what's happened immediately to the economy? Me creating a new $100 giving it to Brent. What's happened? Yes, everyone's currency has just been devalued. Meanwhile, what's your name? Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Lisa, I offer Lisa 200 Wazza dollars extra. So Lisa then puts a mortgage on her home. And I end up doing it with, let's say, this half of the room, okay? So everyone's now got, say, 200-300 Wazza dollars. You guys have got 100, okay? What's going to suddenly, let's just say over here that, what's your name? Sorry? Pat. Pat's running a shop, and Pat's starting to think, hang on a sec, something's not quite right here. And suddenly he starts to realise, hang on a sec, my 100 Wazza dollars isn't worth what it was before. So what's he going to do? Put his price. And that's where inflation, everything comes in. Who just got that really simply? That's actually what's happening right now. But now, what's happening to Wazza? Who's actually making all the money out of this? I've suddenly, think of it for me, I've suddenly now got a mortgage over Brent's home, all of your homes. But what have I done for it? Let's say that all of you now default on your loans. What am I going to do? So suddenly I now own all your houses. I've just stripped the wealth of this country. But what have I actually done? Nothing. And Governor Beardsley Roomy, back in 1946, the Federal Governor of the Reserve Bank, actually admitted in a public speech, he said the main reason why income tax exists is actually not for social services. It's to basically reduce the effect of inflation on the economy. And I'll say that again. Beardsley Roomy said the reason for income tax is not so much for social services, but to reduce the effect of inflation on the economy. Now, why is that? Because let's just say that everyone here now's got 200 Wazza dollars. How much inflation? I'll virtually double the prices. But what if I then charged a tax as well? And I then took back 80 Wazza dollars from every one of you in taxes. I've suddenly slashed inflation down to 20%. Anyone see that now? You'll get that? So that's where taxes is so critical in that whole scheme of things. Why is it important? It's understanding this awareness. So governments want your money, and that's what I'm saying when I say governments steal your money. Understand this. I'm actually a big believer in government. I really am. I think one of the things I love about Australia is we do have regulation and we have government and we have some system. But when governments start stealing and start doing a lot of things they're doing and over-regulating, what happens to us? And it also means that your businesses right now, I see businesses get shut down. There's regularly cases now. Who's heard of the confiscation of properties now? How they can just confiscate properties pretty much when they want to just resume it to do a road. Any of you have experienced that or heard about it? Happened in WA. All this land in Bulldivers just shot up in value in the property boom in the early 2000s. Then the government decided to build a freeway down there. They started resuming these properties and telling everyone they're paying 1/5 of their value. And even though the Constitution actually states you can't do that, the High Court's actually read down the Constitution and said, no, you can do that. The Constitution didn't quite mean what you think it said. So understand that in business, it is a real risk. When you go into business and right now and thinking, it's all fine, I'm not going to be sued, the practical fact is there's a lot of factors out there which can affect your business. There's government regulation. The government can just pass a law on your business. There's the fact that you can suddenly not pay your group tax. This is another one that's really important to understand how business works. Because every 3 months you've got to pay GST and group tax in most businesses they've actually found don't really put the money aside. They see the money as belonging to the business and spend it in the business. What happens when months go by? Suddenly you've got 80 grand owing in group tax or GST or whatever else, and you can't pay it. And so what happens at that point? The government starts chasing after you, and if you don't have the money and you're not properly structured, they'll eventually issue a notice upon you, then they'll go after you, and believe me, they will bankrupt you. They will. They'll have no mercy on that. I've seen that with clients regularly. If you're structured in your own name or not properly structured or not aware what's going on, they will bankrupt you. The ATO, it's internal policy, they will do it. They won't show mercy. So that's just one factor. There's issues about, as I said, being sued. There's issues of just the natural thing in business, in that when you start out in business or you're doing it, the fact is we make mistakes. Sometimes it goes wrong. Who here would absolutely love to be so structured that you know, but if something goes wrong, you've got a second chance? Who thinks that's smart? Yeah, you've got a second chance. And that was the beauty. Because I did structure myself beautifully, when things went wrong for me, I got another chance, which I may not have otherwise had for some time after that. I remember I was involved some time ago in a big investment sort of arrangement. And I remember I literally just about had sleepless nights trying to structure this properly because I knew it was a very intricate scheme and there were a lot of factors that could go wrong. And I did this, and fortunately, as I said, this is for a particular client. And this was the funny or the sad and ironic thing about it. The client ended up being a complete fraud. He ended up actually swindling a whole lot of his clients. And the problem was, when people went after him, actually said the problem is the structure is so watertight, we can't get any money out of him. So in actual fact, that was one time I almost regretted having set it up properly. But she set the whole thing up really beautifully, ran the whole thing through because he's running it internationally, we actually set it up in an offshore jurisdiction. It was perfectly legal. It was beautiful. It was beautifully structured. The fact was, it meant they had to go offshore, go to a different jurisdiction to sue them. The money was in a different bank in some other country. I mean, it was going to be impossible to basically do anything about it unless you're willing to spend $500,000. So understand in business, if you structure yourself properly, and it's not really that expensive in the scheme of things to do it. It really isn't. And you walk away with peace of mind, knowing your business is completely structured and secure. So what's some of the keys for a watertight business to be properly structured? Asset secrets of the rich. It said straw man, person of substance. So I mentioned this before. Very, very simply, it's this. You've got a partner, and your partner's at low risk, you're at high risk. Well, so you've got low risk and high risk. So let's say you've got husband, you've got wife. You've got husband is basically in business, let's say at high risk of being sued, and you've got wife who's basically at home and not working or doing whatever else. Who's the one who's at risk of being sued? He is. So really, who should own the assets? And who should control the trust? She should. Companies and trusts. That's the secrets of the rich. Why? Because you set up a wall or shell of protection for you. It's about separation of business and personal risk. And this is a trick I will show you that saved me a few years ago and saved many of my clients. Who wants to see it? It's actually not that difficult. Who here is in business and he does not have a company? Anyone? Few. Okay. Let's say that something does go badly wrong. Okay. Your company is separate from you. Now, that's really important to understand this, because if you actually get sued in your business and get sued in your company, the company is going to take the load. So let's just say, for example, that your company's got lots of debts it can't pay. The company then can simply shut itself down or go into what's called administration. Voluntary administration is where you hand over to the administrator sees if they can trade out of it, then shuts it down. Unless you sign personal guarantees on your debts, the debts die with the company. And here's the biggie. Let's say that you owe $100,000 in group tax in that company. That gets completely wiped automatically. Unless you've got a director's penalty notice, which you've ignored, it gets shut down. Now, admittedly, if you've racked up debts in a company, there is always a risk of insolvent trading, which means basically taking out credit when you really shouldn't have done so because you knew you couldn't pay it. However, in practice, again, this is how the system works. It virtually never happens. It's like insider trading. It virtually never happens. You have to be incredibly unlucky. I've seen some outrageous cases. I've seen of abuse of the system. I actually had involved with a client about 2 years ago. And he actually had a staff member who was just literally doing fraudulent things as an accountant in his books. He was fraudulently doing tax returns to increase client refunds, because by giving the client a higher refund, the client was happier, then you could charge them more. You know, there's all kinds of stuff I've seen people doing that. And this was done, by a client some time ago. I saw this situation. But the thing is that when the agents board got reported to him, you know what their comment was? Shrugged his shoulders and said, "Oh, well, it's an internal issue, nothing to do with us." Tax agents board said that. He said, "Well, it's nothing to do with us. It's an internal issue. They can sort it out." So they didn't care. We've tried to report things to ASIC many times, and ASIC shrugged their shoulders. They don't care. So understand this, that although there's a lot of things about the system which in that way is corrupt and not good, it means in business, and I'm certainly, do not misunderstand me, I am not in any way encouraging you to do anything unethical, lacking integrity, that goes against it. But understand this, a lot of our stresses we have in business are not real. And if you're properly set up and structured correctly, you're going to be completely fine. So setting up a company or a trust puts a wall of protection between you and between anyone trying to sue you, meaning the money can go down to you personally. McDonald's structure, very simply, I call it that because McDonald's keep their branding in a separate trust or structure from their business. And what I mean by that is this. Who thinks that if you went to McDonald's down in, say, Melbourne City and sued them, but the McDonald's whole branding is at risk? Do you think they're protected from that? Yeah, all their branding is owned by a company over in the US somewhere, from what I understand. So that's why I call it McDonald's strategy. If you actually got a business which you're going to build some value in, which you expect it to really grow and be saleable, in other words, sell it off one day, you want to make sure you've got that happening. Anyone here got a business that you actually want to build it beyond yourself, have staff and have value here? One person, yeah. Like Jamie spoke about today. So that's the kind of thing you want. You want to be really, really well structured and have a separate structure, so double structure I call it. License agreements as well, between protecting them. I've mentioned about liquidation. Here's another big point. Really understand this one. Credit rating and bankruptcy. This is one that gets really missed. Let's just say that your business really goes to the cleaners. You go broke and you're sole trader. Whose credit rating is affected? Yours. Let's say that the company is sued. Whose rating gets affected? I mean, I've seen this with one particular client who we were helping with, and we must admit, it was a very enjoyable situation. They had these absolute idiots trying to sue them, for a debt where they're given really bad service, and then they had 2 writs against the company. They had I had the great joy of ringing up as a lawyer and saying, "Oh, hello, I'm just letting you know, but the company's just been put into administration, so you can't actually chase my clients anymore. You now have to ring the administrator and wait your turn." And they hear this heavy, "Oh, thank you very much," which means they knew straight away they're sunk. So in other words, understanding it gives you an absolute protection. Do you get what I'm saying here? Asset protection is not about avoiding ethical obligations. I really want to be strong on that one. But it gives you the power in your hand to determine what's ethical, rather than someone else telling you, you should be paying this or whatever. This is what you should be doing. You should be doing that. You should be doing this. Rather, it's you saying in yourself, well, yes, no, this is what I want. You get it? Okay. Tax minimisation, keeping the tax man at bay. As I said, I've covered the bulk of what I'm going to go on tonight. I really want to concentrate a lot on business structure. I'm going to cover a little bit about tax as well, and just a little bit about business strategy. I mentioned that tax is effectively 69%, and we pretty much all agreed here that that borders on stealing. 48% bankrupt. In other words, of businesses, they reckon on average, become bankrupt because of some government intervention indirectly through tax office or some authority. 1 day per week. That's the average amount of time a small business spends on compliance obligations. How you make money. This is what tax actually does to your wealth, and showing you why it's such an issue. If you're paying maximum tax rate, it's 441, 30%, that 15%. Look at the difference in figures. Is that quite startling? What's really scary now is bit by bit, I've watched over every year, the tax laws get more and more eroded. I can tell you now, it's now getting to the point where I reckon we're 3 to 4 years away from where I think it's going to be very difficult to use trust to save tax in certain situations. Because the old strategy was putting money into a bucket company to keep tax at 30%. Well, that's pretty much. Now, you still can do it, but there's a lot more challenges, a lot more things you have to do to actually make that work. So bit by bit, they are making it more and more harder. And I mention that because the fact is, with societies, this is the procedure with tax. When tax is fair, people will pay it and have no problem with it. When tax is unfair, people start trying to find ways around it. If it gets too bad, you have what's called a revolt. The Peasants' Revolt. There's been many taxes. The US Revolution, one of the factors was a revolt, the Boston Tea Party, anyone? Because it was a final straw for the Americans, was a tax on tea. And they said, we've had enough. King George had basically, as well as imposing fractional reserve banking on Americans, which they hadn't had up until 1753, forced them to to go on the different taxes and this kind of tax and that kind of tax, and the final straw was a tax on tea. And that was when Paul Revere, that famous picture on the knight riding on the horse, calling the people for revolution. So understand in Australia the way it's going, that will be inevitable. There'll be a legal revolution, there'll be some kind of revolution. That you can be assured. It's just a question of when. Look at 20 years. Who is blown away by the differences just in tax on your net worth? That's on $100,000 only invested. So who here knows about ShareLord, the share trading? Yeah. Imagine if you traded ShareLord and made 20% per annum. Is that possible from ShareLord? Yeah, it is. It actually is possible. By simply reducing your tax legally, that's what the difference is. The other interesting thing about the book, The Law, by Bastiat, which I mentioned up there, is there's a very interesting discussion about the difference between legal and lawful. For example, he says it may be legal to make a law saying you can basically kill, kill more than one child in a family. But is it lawful? No. So slashing your tax. Income splitting. So we mentioned in business this double trust structure and all this kind of stuff. So I'm just going to do a bit of diagrams on here. So you've got double trust structure. So let's just say you've got family trust running your business and you've got your branding trust or business over here. So what that is let's just say you're building a business, you're going to go ahead, you want to actually build value into your company. The branding like McDonald's is held over here. That licenses over to here. You license it over to say, McDonald's in, Kuala Lumpur or whatever else. And that can all be licensed everywhere. You get asset protection, you have everything sorted out. You also can minimise and save your tax. So the beautiful thing about trust is the ability to split income and save tax. Let's just give you a very simple example of how that works. And I always like to use my Donald and Daisy example. So you've got Donald and Daisy Duck, and they've got 4 children. They've got Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Spewy. So these are their four children, 4 ducks. And the idea is, let's just say they're running their business, they're earning income from, let's just make up a business, they're doing mortgage broking, for example. So what they want to do is split the income. Now let's just say that Donald and Daisy, through mortgage broking, and let's just make up a figure. Let's say Donald's earning $200,000 a year, Daisy's earning, let's say, nothing because she's staying home looking after the 4 ducks. So Donald makes his $200,000 a year doing beak surgery, Daisy stays at home. So let's just say that they do ShareLord, or let's say that they run another business or whatever else. Let's say they're doing mortgage broking through this. So Donald's earning, let's say, $200,000. Let's just say, for argument's sake, Daisy's running a mortgage broking business as well while looking after the kids. The money's coming in there, let's say $100,000 extra income. Now, if Donald got that income, how much tax would he pay? A lot? He'd be paying the maximum rate, 46.5%. So he'd be up for about $46,500. Let's say that Daisy earned income. Not too bad because she's got no income, but she still pays tax for around about 30 grand. Let's just say that they do this. Each child under 18 can get 2.5 grand tax-free. So basically 10 grand is tax-free straight away. Let's say they give 20% of their income to tithe or church or charity. They can give 20 grand income and to charity, and that can be tax-free. That's now 30 grand tax-free. Let's say in turn that they give $70,000 to Daisy, for example, or let's say $80,000 we'll use, because that up to $80,000 only 30% tax, so she'd only end up paying around about $18,000 tax. The rest goes into what's called a bucket company. So the bucket company here, actually no, it's $100,000 only. So let's just say $60,000 goes to Daisy, or actually 70,000 she can make, and that's only going to pay her $16,000 tax. So effectively, the taxation's gone from where it would have been 46,000 with Donald, or would have been 30,000 with Daisy, to where it's effectively dropped down just through simple a little bit of tax planning to $16,000. Is that pretty massive? Yeah. So the idea of trust is to basically slash your tax and as well as keep your assets completely safe. So just one thing too in business, just to understand a bit about trust. Who here earns your income in business only through doing their own services, not by selling products like Jamie talked about? Yeah. Anyone here make their money from selling products to people? Anyone? Run a business actually sells products? Okay, one person, yep. The reason why is personal service income as a rule can't be split, except in very limited circumstances, whereas product income you can. So when Jamie talked to you today about the rich building business which actually sells products and actually sells things rather than their services and things like that, and that's what makes them rich, but also for tax purposes you'll pay less tax. The laws truly do favour the rich with tax and those who are in business and who know what they're doing. Okay, so splitting income using a trust capital gains tax. I mentioned a bit about companies already. One big point is don't use a company to buy and hold assets because you'll pay twice as much capital gains tax as you would otherwise. I mentioned about the family trust splitting your income, an example. Just some deductions. Now, who here has a home-based business or looking at that? Anyone? Few. Okay, you can claim certain expenses, home office, depreciation on laptop, electricity, lighting, furniture, possibly rates, interest and taxes, possibly. But certainly these ones, depreciation, laptop, electricity. So if you've got your office actually where you're running it from home, you're actually separate part of the house, the ATO say you may be able to claim part of your rates, interest and tax, but understand you do get part of your capital gains tax exemption affected if you do that. Big one is conferences, seminars, business education. So if you've paid to come to this Business Academy event or if you've paid to go to any kind of conference related to your business, you can claim it. So the beautiful thing is a lot of expenses which I do, which I actually can claim in my business all the time. Education stuff which normally I can actually claim it. Okay, so car expenses. When you're in business too, you can do things like buy cars in much better ways. For example, if you're buying a car through finance and you've got your GST registered, you really should be looking at what's called a chattel mortgage, okay? CHATTEL mortgage, because you can actually get your GST back on a chattel mortgage. So it's very, very useful in business. So if you're actually going to use the car for private purposes, like not for business, you wouldn't do a chattel mortgage. But you might do a novated lease. You'd employ yourself through a company and do that. So chattel mortgage and novated lease are two key terms. You got finance lease, which means you could, if you're not registered for GST, then generally I say you want to use a finance lease. So in summary, if you're a business GST registered, chattel mortgage. If you're a business not GST registered, finance lease. If you're a business but you're going to use the car for private purposes, salary and wages. You can claim lots of expenses in business, just be aware. I always say in business, be aware as soon as you are and you set up a company properly, there are certain things you can start claiming you otherwise wouldn't. I think one of the interesting things, like I found, a classic example is I travel a lot to do with seminars and speaking. So because I travel heaps for seminars and speaking all the time, it's interesting. I was just noticing that the other day, my food bill personally at home, I was realising is actually, last year was actually not that high. I wondered why at one stage, and I realised why. And even now, why it's less, it's because when I go away, I can claim all my meals and travel. It's all deductible. So because of that, it means effectively that's paid for by business, paid for by the tax office. He thinks that's pretty sexy, using Eric's word. I was going to say who thinks I'm sexy. I don't need to. I just know you all think I am anyway. Especially Todd Hutchinson at the back. Internet marketing. You can claim things like course costs, ongoing expenses, Google AdWords, software, carry forward. I might add, who here is in business right now and who's done internet marketing courses? Yeah. You can claim it. Generally, if you're in business and it's to take your existing business into onto the internet, you can claim it. So realise that the moment you're in business, a lot of your courses you actually can start claiming. For example, you generally can't claim a course of education, like let's say you do a law degree to get a job or something. Because I was an accountant at the time, I was able to claim my law degree fully, all covered. It's actually quite funny. People ask me what I paid for my education, my accounting and law degree. I actually didn't pay anything, which completely shocks people. I said it was just the way things worked. I did my accounting degree just before HECS came in, when it was all free education from the Whitlam era. And then when I did my law degree, they brought in HECS. But at the time at the ATO, they had a scholarship. And the scholarship was that if you did a law degree, they actually would pay it to help you increase your knowledge. So I did that. And just at the time, I just finished my law degree at the time, they removed the scholarship. He thinks that's really cool. So the government literally paid my whole education. I thought it was fantastic. Really grateful to them, thank you. So various things you can claim when you're in business. Business strategy. So I want to briefly touch on this before I close, only very briefly. So I spent a lot of time today on asset protection and tax and just, especially what I call more the, purpose and foundation of a lot of what it's about and why I'm doing what I'm doing and why it's important. Who we are after what I've talked about law and everything else, probably a bit of a deeper understanding of the tax system and why you've got to protect yourself. Anyone got something new out of this? Yeah. It does. It gives you a deeper perspective on why you've got to protect your assets and the forces or whatever you're up against. Because you are. Understand this. The system as a whole is not pro-small business. When you go into small business, it's not like the system is there to support you, encourage you. It's pro-big business monopolies taking over and controlling the economy. So when you're in small business, there's forces that are working against you all the time. So that's why you want to really make sure that you set up and you got things in hand like tax and everything else. Business strategy, fail to plan or plan to fail. I mentioned that about the Harvard things, graduates and that one. Very, very simply, it's absolutely imperative. If you're in business right now and you want to grow your wealth, you want to build a plan. I'm not just talking about some loosey-goosey business plan, but something that's got a bit of substance, a bit of strategy, and that's actually achievable. And your roadmap as well. So making sure you've got a business strategy, roadmap, things like that. So I'm quite passionate about this, having worked now with Todd and seeing firsthand what his stuff does and his profiling, everything else. I mean, Todd did the profiling, that disc behavioural profiling you talked about? I mean, he did that on me, and I'm basically the creator he was talking about, which made a lot of sense. And I couldn't help laughing when he was talking about, people who, when they're in a business that's working, often will change it just because they get bored and want to do something different. Remember when he said that about creators? Exactly what I'm like. Number of times in business where I've actually had it clocking over beautifully, and then I actually get a bit frustrated. And one of my things I used to frustrate my staff immensely about, for example, was turning up one day at a seminar. And I don't know, I was getting up to present, and I was looking at my presentation thinking, this is a really boring product. I don't like it. I'm over this. I've been selling this for too long. So I actually just sat there and I created a new product on my computer, absent-minded at the back of the room. And I liked it so much, I thought, I'm going to sell it. I didn't tell any of my staff. I just got up and sold it. So all the staff are sitting there, and next minute I get up and sell this whole new product. And then I said, all my staff at the back of the room will take your orders. And I could just see the look of panic on my face. Suddenly occurred to me, oh, I actually didn't tell them. I just sort of done this and created this product. This is about a good 2.5 years ago now. And apparently it's a classic trait of a creator. Jamie McIntyre used to, apparently Jamie used to do that all the time. We'd just turn up and create a new idea and just decide on the spur of the moment. And part of knowing yourself and knowing who you are in planning your strategy makes life a heck of a lot easier. And so when I was behaviour profile with Todd, I was a classic creator. He said he's a classic mechanic or more compliance, that sort of way. And yeah, Derek in our business, one of the other guys, he's far more on a sort of influencer, supporter, that kind of side. So knowing your role does make a big difference. So I know in business, when I'm in my flow and when things really work for me and I look back over my life is when I create, when I'm making new things, when I'm the guy who makes things happen and other people sort of come alongside and just work with me and actually make things happen alongside me. That's when I work best. When I get highly stressed out is when people say to me, you've just got to follow through with what you start. And it really stresses me massively. Because inside I'm thinking, well, just help me. Help me, help me, help me. I've got the thing, can't you see? It's a great idea. I need help. And I actually start getting flustered. And what I liked about working with Todd is Todd got that with me. He really got that with me. He worked that out with me because of that profiling. So I've noticed he and I work beautifully, because whereas Todd, as he says, more mechanic, and he's a very, very good one. He's excellent. Todd's attention to detail and process is outstanding. But Todd, and Todd won't mind me saying this, I think on the vision and creative compliance side, I think it's a little bit, his knickers in a knot, excuse the French, at times. And I can see that with Todd. And I can see with Todd, there's certain things in business for him where he's got incredibly good business behind him, but where he could have got a lot further by having a creator alongside him. That was really why we teamed up, because we both realised we both had exceptional skills, but we also had exceptional weaknesses, which we all do. So we needed that. And whereas Todd's more like, gets excited, but he's like, right, let's make it happen. Like when we talk about ideas, what I love working with Todd is I get his ideas and we talk about it. The next minute, Todd's got this great big strategy plan and roadmap and these are the agenda items and this is what we've got to do, this is what we've got to follow through with. Classic mechanic. Whereas myself, as I said, I'm just like, I get highly agitated. When people say you just need stability and to slow down and that kind of stuff, and that is true. But I'm like saying, well, you get alongside me and help slow me down. So that's where in our company now we've got this. So really in business, and moving your business forward, and if you're passionate about it, you want to understand who you are. Okay? You really want to get who you are. And you really want to get a clear business strategy. So one of the things this weekend is Todd's obviously around. I'm going to be talking about consultations afterwards. You can speak to either of us about that, about business strategy and making that happen. Okay. Okay, conclusion. What you basically want in today is a system, and you want to make sure you're structured properly in business. And you want to be seeing the right accountants and business strategists that can actually help you with what you're doing. Because who here knows right now, and I know this, I'll openly say that in certain areas I absolutely need help. And I know that. That's why I've got Todd. I know that. I find it very difficult to manage myself at times. Don't laugh. And it's true. I know that. I admit that. It's a weakness of mine. When I actually one of the good things for me was 10 years ago, I did a compliance and suitability test on myself. I found out, and those who know me don't laugh, I found out I'm a 2% suitability in doing practical tasks. 2%. The lady said to me, that's one of the lowest she'd ever seen. She goes to me, do you find practical tasks really difficult? I said, yeah, I do. Like for me, putting together, say, a do-it-yourself fan is a major drama. I sit there and I genuinely stress. I'm like, I know when our tap at home busted one time, I'm like sitting there going, and I'm actually starting to stress. I'm just staring at the tap and just spewing up water. And in the end, it was like, oh, I suppose I better do something about it. And it was quite funny, but I look back. Even little things like, I'll see the light needs to be changed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to get up there, unscrew it and put a light bulb in. And it's funny, until I understood about myself, but I actually have a 2% suitability for practical tasks. I failed woodwork at school, I failed metalwork, and I failed technical drawing. So anything that was practical, I was absolutely horrendous in. But anything that's creative, marketing, mathematical, when I was 13, I could beat a calculator in mental maths. I still today can beat a calculator in many cases. When I was 3, I could sing in perfect pitch with music. So there's so many things I know I'm gifted and talented in. I know there's that too. So you need to have a team around you. At the end of the day, you need the right accountants, the right business strategists, the right advisors. Who's now really with me? Who totally gets that? Yeah. Thank you, Brent. I'm in your team, man. I'm with you. Okay, so thank you very much. Who here has got some good value out of that? Look forward to speaking with some of you over the weekend. Enjoy. Thank you for staying.